Excellent. Hello world, Podler team back at it again. We're doing some track 2 voicing. That's where we go the various principles of Podler in various themed sections. And right now we are in the About Yourself section, which is an advanced section. And we have already been doing some work, those who've been following us, and we're going to continue with that with Ben. We're basically talking about the arc of his horography so far. And the goal is to have at least 36 beats. That can be done individually as a specific nugget, but those nuggets, they actually combine to make an arc. All right, introductions. I am Nai G Coach. With me I have Nai G Ben. So Ben, can you give me a status of where you're at, and we'll just go from there.
Cool, yeah, so far I have 32 beats laid out. And I've been doing a lot of like reorganizing, restructuring of things, and kind of thinking about, okay, do I really need this beat, or maybe I can break this up into 2 or 3 beats, doing that kind of stuff, like rephrasing things, basically like, yeah, finding places where like I cover like 2 things like twice, but like maybe I could cover something slightly different here, so it like covered, it isn't repetitive, and it gets more of the fuller picture.
Exactly, because you want each. It's like a trick, right? It's like a personal math problem of trying to make each beat distinct. It has its own information, has its own reward, its own impact, its own wow or whatever. But then it does link with all the others to make the arc.
Yeah, and oftentimes that's good if you want to make like transitions between them.
Good. Yes.
Because like if you do know you want to like talk a little bit about something, like transition into the next one. So it's
yeah, and part of that is an overall theme, because this for everyone needs to do this, but definitely a lot, I think, for subjective mojos, because they have a lot inside themselves, and then a lot the hunters, because as we know they have a propensity for monologuing. So a lot of times the issue is you've got so much to say, which with so much intensity. That's the thing hunters, all 4 of them, the interpretive ones, the literal ones, the logic-based ones, the values-based ones, all hunters have a lot more volume, specificity, and intensity in their communication. So it's really good to kind of be able to realize, oh, I need a platform. Yeah, everyone should do this. I think everyone should do it. It's like a really good spirit forming thing, but definitely hunters as worldview map mojos, having your basic platform, you know what I mean, about me. This is kind of what I do, what I believe in. It's very important to sort of have that thought up to some degree, and how to introduce it. And thus you can kind of play off of it. It's good to be able to get that cruiser, that heavy cruiser. It's good to get that heavy cruiser onto the board, to know how to, like, Voltron style, build that heavy cruiser by individual transformers. You can put them in, but they will then eventually grow into your, worldview map mega cruiser, of which you have all these aircraft carriers. I'm kind of like by Z Visions here. You have like, aircraft. That's like all the new vlogs you'll do from like, L11 through L20. And then beyond that, you start getting like, extensions from that. But a lot of times, I use kind of a very literal example here with the ViZ. You need to get that major launching pad on the board. And because that's difficult to do all at once, you need to know how to make it modular. Modular nuggets of your heavy, aircraft platform.
Yeah, because then you can replace things, pretty easily.
Yeah, and you can also fit them in, one piece at a time. Like you're talking to a person in a library, you're talking to them, on the road, you're talking to them at a party, at a class, whatever it is. There's nuggets that may be more appropriate in certain environments and certain interests of the person you're talking to. You know what I mean? So it's good to know, like, you can give them any one of them, but as you're doing it still, any of those nuggets that you can get in, you're building the arc. In the back of your mind, you always know, you're like, aha, I put 3 pieces in. Even they don't know that. All worldview map powers are designed that way. As far as being directive, that makes them a directive perception. As they observe the arc of what's going on, the motifs, what's going on, it likes to see that platform pieces are being put in. Do you know what I mean? Even they're not paying off right now, okay, but I do programming. I introduced this, and every time you do that, you may not get a dividend right then, but from the next conversation on, you will, because you like talking about that. If the person at the cash register at some store you go to a lot knows that you're a programmer and they're friendly, then the conversation automatically next time will be less boring than it normally is, right? Not that you do this to everybody, but as a person you actually like you like their energy, it's good to actually be able to put little things in, like, okay, if that came up naturally, there's certain things that will come naturally there. It would make the conversation more on message as far as a worldview map goes. Do you know what I mean? Your arc basically helps, even people disagree with you, but they will have to debate you as the public intellectual you are, holding the views that you do.
Yeah, that's true.
Alrighty, so it sounds like you did some good, maybe high-level work there. Before we go to new beats, do you want to maybe take me through a quick tour to show me changes from behind?
Yeah, let's do that. Because I have like reordered some things and changed some things.
That'd be good.
So yeah, so do you want me to just go like start to finish again?
Yeah.
Just talking, just not really going too far in depth, but just covering.
Yeah, that'd be good.
All right. Let's see here. Okay, yeah. So, so I start out with family. The first beat, I talk about, you know, what it was like for me, my experiences were overall, just really high level. Then I talk about some of the issues that I had with my family growing up. Then I talk about inspiring and positive experiences I had, positive impact. And then I get into friends. I talk about the friends I had in Arizona. Then I talk about the transition in my behavior after moving from Arizona to Minnesota. So like, you know, I became colder, more reserved, things like that. Then I talk about the social aspect of school, what that was like for me. And then I talk about the friends I had in Minnesota. And then I talk about role-playing games. And then I talk about RuneScape. And then I talk about different experiences I had with hacking various games. And then I talk about games that are more RNG heavy. Then I talk about my other. And then I talk about YouTube, but the first beat for YouTube, I talk about stuff that was more like gaming related, and then I talk about stuff that branched out to other areas. Because like how I got started was more focused on gaming, but that kind of allowed me to branch out to other areas. So I think it'd be good to divide that into those two beats. And then I talk about the friends I had in Michigan, but I focus on the ones I had before getting into Podlayer, because I think that's a good distinction to make. And then I talk about the academic aspect of school, because that was like, when it comes to like academics, I wasn't really interested in academics like up until like when I was in Michigan. I didn't really like the academic aspect was really before then just me not really being into the academic aspect. So it's probably good that's probably a good time to start talking about that.
That's good. And
then I talk about public speaking, and the reason why I talk about public speaking more broadly is because I actually did like 3 different public speaking activities. Debate was like the biggest one, but I also did forensics public speaking, and I did a particular, and what that is that's like a variety of different speaking events that aren't really focused on debate, but could be focused on a variety of different things, such as theater or drama, or it could be something that is more like politics related, which is what I did, which is extemporaneous speaking. And what that is you essentially are given a topic, and you have 30 minutes to prepare a 7-minute speech on that topic, to research it and to deliver it. So yeah, that was pretty, yeah. So a lot of the public speaking I did was very time constrained. It was like you had to like, you know, you had to really like just process like so much and then give a speech in a really short amount of time.
That's
Oh, sorry, you were saying?
Oh, I just was saying that that's a very cool skill set to have developed.
Yeah, I ended up learning a lot from that. I think it made me in general more comfortable speaking than I otherwise would be.
Well, it sounds like you got several things there. It sounds like you were more comfortable
And also
speaking.
it made me a lot better at academics because I could research things very quickly.
Yeah.
And that probably helped out with programming too, I'm guessing.
Yeah, you said your academics kind of jumped up at that point, right?
Yeah, I was a lot more driven to do well in academics, just because like it sort of felt like it was more a part of me at that point, and it was a lot easier for me to read and understand things quickly. So yeah, that was really. I would have to say like that those activities were really they're really interesting because they kind of like I'm wondering like. Because it seems like it had the kind of impact such that it made me like significantly smarter, just being trained to learn and think on my feet really quickly. So I'm wondering what the implications of that are for other people, if other people might find that sort of activity beneficial. But
possibly, I was actually thinking about that as you were talking about it. I think there's a combination of elements. I think one is the smaller portion, the minor portion, but still important,
mm-hmm.
which is what you're alluding to, I think, is it helps your mind structure
mm-hmm.
how to come at things a bit differently as far as canvassing and as far as expressing. And that definitely gives you better abilities. And perhaps I think maybe for those with the ZES powers that are momentum, maybe that would be more of a major element because it does give you sort of like the rules of play. You know what I mean? And then that feels good to know, and you're much more efficient. But I think that probably the major portion, definitely for, I would say, probably those who are not as inclined with their powers towards certain academics, although that's a very complex issue and any mojo can be very into stuff. Hey there, Glenn.
Hey.
So we're just going to go over Ben's stuff, and then we'll move on to you once we're done there. So Naji, Glenn has joined us. All right, so we're talking about the effect that the debate and the style of debate that he did, where there was like forensics, correct? And you were talking extemporaneously. You said that kind of changed the way your mental processes work. So I think that there is definitely that element, but I think maybe even more perhaps because I experienced the same thing that you're talking about with role-playing games, particularly similar to how you did programming, and then you also like to hack games. Yes. For me, that was being the referee of the game. I like to play all the characters. I like to figure out how the rules played for all of them, and I like to actually be understanding the game world. I like to deconstruct the game world. And when I started, I still didn't care for necessarily more like standardly accepted math, but my powers of logic got extremely strong in debate and just in general. And it sounds like the same thing you're talking about, and it came from that. One part is the rules, and I think that's what you're referencing with the debate. The rules of role-playing game, there are rules to it. That definitely helps my mind understand logical structure a lot better. But I think the other element, which is why I was able to do it that way and you did it your way, and we're both Naji doing it, I believe it was a chance to shine. It was a chance to be a hero for the tribe in some way that you actually thought was good. And so some things I think that may be similar. I've noticed this theme among Naji in general, but I think it's people in general. But I noticed for us, getting motivated for classic, quote unquote, academics can be challenging. Yet sometimes we get into it and then we're like freakishly good. And it has to do with the motivation. And so for you as the debate, I'm curious, maybe Glenn has this in his end too, but it seemed fair. It was a fair way for people to have an elevated conversation. It's an we were talking about this before, Ben, at the very beginning, how if you tell someone at a cashier that you know and they're friendly and you like them, and you actually mention that you do programming or whatever in some way that's charismatic and they can remember, the next time you talk with them, the conversation will be better. It will be elevated. It's not the same level 1 conversation every time. If you put that seed in, next time the conversation will be at least level 2, at least on that topic. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
So anyway, with your debate, for example, it's going to be elevated conversation. This isn't normal conversation, casual conversation, common conversation. It's about a specific topic. It's getting meaty. It's getting deep. It's going over the fine points and debating them. It's more interesting. So the same way, you probably notice like that sensation you also kind of feel when you're playing certain video games or whatever. It's that it's being excited by the ability to level up in a way that equates to peaking. Do you know what I mean? And that's why I think the programming for you, that's a language I didn't get into, but I have gotten into other things. Like there was a time, I've forgotten it all now, but there was a time where people were freaked out by how many role-playing games I knew the rules of. Like I didn't play them that many because there were so many of them, and they were like exotic games that no one ever played from like Europe and stuff. Like no one plays that, but I just liked knowing the rules of it for the same reason. It's fun. Does that make sense? I could feel myself leveling up. If I had to boil it down, I could feel my teaching story getting smarter. So I guess now there. G, I could feel myself being more like a character that I admire from that story. Do you know what I mean? I think debate gave you that because I've known you for a while now, and you've mentioned it many times over the years. And it was a chance to fairly compete and show that you are willing to study more, you're willing to get over your nervousness, you're willing to rethink your arguments if they're shaky, you're willing to do that work. So it puts you in a kind of elite company.
It did, yeah. Yeah, because I didn't really have like, before then I hadn't really been involved in any clubs or activities or anything to really, I guess, show my skills or what I can do, and I found that debate was a good outlet for that. So,
thanks. Hey Mitchell.
Hello. Sorry I'm late.
No worries.
Hey Mitchell.
But Ben was kind of just going over a reworking of his overall arc outline. He did some tweaks on that, and then he's gonna get to his new stuff.
Cool.
Oh yeah, and I've already interweaved like some things that are new, but yeah, it's kind of.
Okay, I'll tell you what, how do we do this, Ben, because you went a lot last time. How do we start with, why don't you bring us up to date, keep it to where you left off last time, and then we'll let some other ones jump in and come back to you at the end. Does that sound good?
Yeah, it sounds good. So I'll start from the beginning and just go through.
Yeah, sure, because later on, guys, I want everyone to sort of be able to give feedback on the other people's arcs. You know, their overall, the nuggets, so forth, because we know each other quite well, and so maybe we can help, make sure that the arc has all things that it needs to have, and that you're sure about why you're doing certain things. Even if you change nothing, still, we know each other quite well, and we actually have a good idea for a story and what's going on with phenomenon of qualia. So it would be good to get that feedback. So especially Ken, guys, try to actually really pay attention to each other person's turn and what they're doing, and so you can give some kind of input of some kind. All right, go ahead.
All right, cool. So the first beat, I give an overview of what my family life was like, or has been like up to this point, and then I talk about some of the family issues I had growing up. I talk about some of the positive experiences, the positive impact I had with my family. So those are the first 3 beats. Then I talk about the friends I had in Arizona. Then I talk about the transition in behavior after moving from Arizona to Minnesota. I became a lot colder and reserved and so forth. Then I talk about the social aspect of school in general for me, what that was like. Then I talk about the friends that I have had in Minnesota. And I talk about role-playing games. RuneScape is a separate beat. And then I talk about some of the experience I had hacking different games. And I talk about RNG heavy games, my other, and then I talk about I talk about YouTube. I talk about the sort of gaming related stuff that got me into YouTube, and then I talk about how I branched out into other areas and interests with YouTube, and then I talk about some of the friends I had in Michigan before coming to Podlair. So to distinguish from my Podlair friends, because I think that's a good distinction. And then I talk about the academic aspect of school and what that was like for me, because previously I hadn't really gotten into academics all that much. So maybe. Then I talk about public speaking. And I guess I should probably flesh this out a little bit more. I did debate, and that was one activity, but there's also a completely separate activity called forensics, and that includes a lot of different categories. But I only really specialized in one category, and most people did. And the one I specialized in was in extemporaneous speaking. With extemporaneous speaking, you're not really debating with anyone, rather you're given a topic and you have 30 minutes to research it, prepare it, and then deliver it. And typically you want it to be about 7 minutes long and be well structured with a good introduction, 3 points, and a conclusion, typically. And then I talk about my Podlair friends, just kind of following the general chronology here. And then I get into programming, and I have 4 beats for programming. The last one is slightly different than I had previously. But the first beat for programming is my overall talent and process when it comes to programming. The current projects I'm working on, the inspiration that I get with programming, and I talk about my other with this as well as some other aspects to it. So kind of like the spiritual benefits of programming and spiritual value I get from it. Then I talk about my career prospects and interests, and I talk about, because I just talked about career prospects, I talk about relationship prospects, because I mean, that seems like something that people commonly ask about, so I thought I'd cover it. And then I talk about how I got into typology, and I talk about how I got into Podlair. And then I talk about the challenges that I had coming into Podlair, the responsibility of reflecting and updating your opinions constantly as you, because it tends to like completely change the way you think about things. And then the feeling of responsibility of your becomment, always striving to, improve yourself more and more, and, to take heroic action. It can be kind of challenging if you get really comfortable with, living an NPC lifestyle. And then I talk about the benefits, the closer connection to my other, I became more intelligent and more heroic. And then I talk about some future heroic goals I have, some general things like getting better at mojering and things like that. I have that in the beat. And I talk about more specific things like Podlair game development and AI and neural networks. So
excellent.
That totals 32 beats. So I'm a little bit short, but I think I can definitely fill in the rest.
Cool.
So
I have some high level stuff. I'll just throw out there.
Yeah.
First sounds great overall. I'm really looking forward to seeing this character come more to life and learning more about you. But I noticed that you mentioned your other, which I think is great. And so I would not have necessarily suggested that if you weren't wanting to go there, but since you did, that opens up the idea that perhaps you might want to do, not that you do, but just saying that structurally, my Zai noted, you could then do a beat on a Mazout, a beat on Daryu, and a beat on Fumasta, and that adds 3.
I should do that. That'd be awesome.
Because you need 36 beats, so you're 4 beats off, so that'd be three of them right there.
Yeah, and then I can include them where they're the most relevant. That'd be great. Yeah, I should definitely do that.
Cool.
Yeah.
Do you guys have anything
to add to Ben's stuff?
Yeah, or just a comments or anything at all. Do you understand how this? Do you guys understand it? You
Yeah,
kinda-
yeah.
you get it?
Yeah, Ben had sent, I think actually both of us at this point.
Yeah, I sent them
his
my.
beats just because he did
Okay,
such a
excellent.
good job of laying it out that it was a nice like inspiration for us.
Great.
Yeah.
Ben, perhaps if you want to keep sending these to each other to keep you guys headspace connected
Yeah,
that way.
I've not typed mine yet, but I have a sheet, so I should. But yeah, I did do some work on mine. So basically, what I've done since last time I've been here, which was actually last Tuesday, was I finally actually have like an arc, so I know how it's gonna like basically look. But I don't know if I have like the exact order yet. But it's okay.
Glenn, where you at?
I'm still kind of in the same place that I was before, but I'm working on it more, fleshing it out. I've been quite busy a little bit, but
Okay.
yeah.
All
So
right, well,
I'm getting ideas, especially with Ben's. I'm looking at the beat that he sent over, and I'm getting ideas from that. Given what he's talking about, kind of like using that to sort of like inspire the same kind of conversation, but my personal experience. That's what.
Okay. So how about this? Why don't you try to see if you can add something from last time while Mitchell goes?
Sure. That's what I'm doing right now.
Perfect. So Mitchell, why don't you give us a tour of your arc, and feel free to pause at any time to jot something down or type something down because this whole thing is for you guys, and that may be helpful. I know myself sometimes I'll talk out loud or talk Charlene, but I'm like, ooh, and I want to write down because like I realize I'm kind of burbling up good sentences, good ideas, good arguments, good points.
Yeah. Cool. So basically what we decided last time that mine was probably going to look like, it was probably going to start out sort of more specific, then was going to try to like maybe branch out to these like sort of big topics. It's hard to like kind of really tamp them down, but just talk about like why I'm interested in them. Then go back to maybe, so like, the first like more specific parts would be just very broadly like growing up, becoming a seeker, that kind of stuff and what that was like for me, some of the different aspects of it, how I found Podlair, all that kind of stuff. Why did that happen? What appealed to me about it? And then, yeah, then that's going to get into the bigger topics, and then that's going to get into like where's it going from there, which is going to get more specific again. That's basically the idea. So from the beginning, so I sort of have this split into two parts. That's why I haven't said how I'm going to order this yet at the beginning. But basically, I mentioned just some of like the seeker interests I had. I had these really obsessive interests as a kid. I was known for I would develop these like encyclopedic memory for these areas that I was interested in. So I was interested in various points. I had to consult someone to remember all them, but cars, Mario games, Pokemon, Star Wars, Harry Potter, astronomy, and then that's mainly, I think that pretty much covers most of what I can remember. Then I'll include something about role-playing games that I played with my friends, and some of the books I like to read in some of those universes and stuff. So basically it gave me I really liked fantasy role-playing stuff. And then because of my interest in astronomy, that also made me interested academically when I got into high school in physics, which is actually what I originally wanted to study in university, although I ended up not going through with that. I suppose it's an interesting story in its own, because I am still interested in physics. But why am I not studying it? Yeah, so that's some of just the interests, but then I'll have to kind of meld that with just my personal journey throughout that, which is basically, I could talk about maybe some of the friends I had and the relationships over the years, and how some of them shifted and some of them stayed the same. I still have some of them. A big one was like the like assertiveness and social anxiety and stuff, and introversion and like the meaningfulness of that to me, and that being handled appropriately, because it wasn't. And that's actually one of the things that interests. That's one of the main. That's really what drew me to psychology and typology and stuff like that. That is like the main thing that took me in that direction. Because yeah, like I grew up, and you're not supposed to be an introvert, and I was really, really introverted, and I felt like such I didn't know what to make of myself. There was something wrong with me. So, but then when you take these typology assessments at school, and I took it a few times at first, and it didn't interest me, and then one time I really looked at it, and I'm like, wow, maybe there's something to this. And I looked into it, and then from then on, that became like my next big obsession. That I studied like every model there was that I could, and I just kept learning and learning and learning, and none of them ever really satisfied me. But I felt like I was getting something, and I guess I was. I mean, because these models, like we say, when we went through the level 8, they get something, that there are the qualia types, and you can see that there are the different. They just don't get them exactly right. But so it helped me in that sense, but it didn't really give me like the full answer I seek. I didn't really ever know. I thought I was probably like a subserv. I was really cooler and used to suppressing my emotions, but yeah, then I read about Naiji on INTP forum. I was listening to Ademus actually, mostly, and his that's how I originally found the material, which is kind of funny. And I wouldn't say I embraced it at first, but like it grabbed my interest, obviously. And obviously it was weird, and that made me weary of it. And I was a very, very cautious person at the time. And I mean, I still am, but maybe a little sure. But, so, yeah. I kind of just swirled it around in my head probably for about a half a year. And then at the end of that, that's when you guys originally first came up with your YouTube channels for the very first time. And when that happened, they were out for like a few weeks. Eventually, I requested a read, and ever since then, I've just been down the rabbit hole. And it is accurate. Yeah, I mean, I can see it in my life. I can see it everywhere. This is happening, and we have to. Yeah, it's a big deal.
It's a big deal.
So yeah, there's that. There's like this other gap for me. I guess also maybe this is a little more advanced. I wouldn't say it's maybe as much growing up, probably more now. But it's like a tri-gap. There's like the gap of my wanting to be involved in like the most just epic, awesome things possible, and epic discoveries and stuff like that, and passionate, like almost fantastical interests. My very scientific sort of interests and academic, which are hard to relate to people sometimes, and then just normal life. So those three things, and trying to bridge that gap, that's really probably always been going on with me, but it's probably even more extreme in some ways than ever. Although I also feel more equipped to deal with it than ever. So that's maybe something I want to talk about. So like some of these beats I haven't fleshed out as much as others. I'm not exactly sure what I want to say, but it's definitely something that's just been on my mind lately. And I still feel it, like it's trying to relate those things and what best practices are for that. Is a rewarding challenge for me, I would say. So yeah, now we're getting into the more like big areas. So the two aspects of that, I guess, would be just general Podler stuff. So I'll probably talk about some of the heroic gains I've had and heroic challenges and stuff, whatever my contributions are to the cause. And then just some of my really broad interests that I'm still exploring now. So obviously, one of the things that drew me to physics in the first place was just the quest to try and find the ultimate laws of nature. And it's really an old story, but it's one that obviously interests a lot of people. I'm certainly not alone in caring so much about that. And so obviously I wanted to study some of the most awesome physics topics, but that led me, exploring the kind of intellectual boundaries of that led me to some other disciplines that I wasn't maybe as into at first, although they were tangential to that, like math and all sorts of aspects of philosophy, philosophy of science, epistemology, philosophy of math, and then I studied more philosophy that led to totally other areas of philosophy, like moral philosophy, even consciousness. Where does that fit into all of this? So yeah, I'm still organizing what that section is going to look like, but I guess kind of my intellectual journey through all of those things is really what that's about, and how it sort of led me around to some of my ideas and activities, and some of the things I'll be talking about. And so that's pretty good. Language is probably in there somewhere. I guess it's part of philosophy anyway. You can consider it all sorts of things. All right, then last, there's the third sort of general arc, and that's just sort of where this is going. My current interests and projects and stuff. So that will include like a thing I already said, like the bridging the gap thing I was already talking about. Developing, I guess, a more comprehensive map of certain areas of science, philosophy, and mathematics, and how they all relate, and why they're important and stuff, and how they relate to all these other things I'm working on. Looking into maybe differences within mojos is something that interests me. So like mojo phenomena is obviously really important, but like I wonder what we could discover about people even within mojos that differ, and that's something I've put some thought into. Obviously, we have concepts of that already, like rips.
Yeah, but there's so much to explore there for sure.
Yeah, there's so much to explore there. Yeah. Well, we have a whole really beef for that in the theory, which is the 1000. Was it 24 or 28? I always forget. To infinity lens. What were the math?
1024.
Yep, 24. Yeah, about 512. Yeah, 256. Yeah. Obviously, I'm interested in like the science of mojo, so like the biology of it and the neuroscience of it. I'd like to get more into that at some point. I think that'd be really cool. Mojo recognition technology, which Ben and I are already thinking about. Just general artificial intelligence, even not necessarily to discover the mojo phenomenon more, but even actually more based on it and its principles would be interesting. Because another thing that AI researchers are studying besides just like how to like parse information more and like discover structure in it, how to make artificial intelligences like relate to humans and like have a kind of social fluency. So that would seem pretty relevant to that, because that's really what we use. We use our mojos to do that. Only among other things, but that's like a major driver there. And obviously, I'm also interested in getting a job in that field. So hopefully, I can use hopefully my life can be somewhat holistic in a sense, and that I can work on something that would also have application for my private interests as well. But it will be what it will be. Stupid compromises. Also, another thing would be that we've been talking about privately, and as you know, I'm interested in is like more like psychotherapeutic and healing aspects of this community, and furthering that is something that interests me, because I don't think that that's something. I mean, with this discovery being as relevant it is to what humans are and the way our minds work and stuff like that, it seems like it would need to be a consideration that's completely not taken into account by modern institutional versions
Sure.
of that. So that's something that's important to me.
Yeah, I really
because-
like Underground Temple. We've had some good discussions there because like sometimes, like I know it's like sometimes things can get like really raw, and it can kind of. I know it's like you, Mitchell, are really good when it comes to those situations where people are having challenges with just the energy of the conversation, and that can be charged up largely because of the significance of the topics being discussed. We talk about a lot of very significant topics.
Indeed,
So
that's
it'd be
probably
good, like,
example in the forum and
Yeah.
stuff like that in some of those sites that maybe think in that direction. Like,
it seems like there's like a certain amount of like just raw like conversation that needs to be had, like given the work that we're doing and just in general, I think people need more of that.
Absolutely.
so you're right. That definitely relates to my thoughts. Indeed, we're discussing some of the most profound philosophical and political issues, and so as a part of that, we have to actually. We can't just. I mean, everyone has baggage. That's true, but you can't like. It's especially important for us to not have it like own you. You have to constantly be improving and dealing with it. And what's the best way to create an environment where that's actually done in a smooth way, which is extremely challenging. It's obviously
Yeah.
going to be
Yeah,
absolute easy.
and that's another thing. Oh yeah, go ahead, Mitchell. I don't want to.
That's
You.
That's
And that's like another thing is like there's like a lot of like personal development that oftentimes needs to be done with Podlayer, but it can be sometimes like quite challenging to figure out how someone should go about working on some of the things they have trouble with and recognizing that they have them. So, and sometimes I find that like the way in which like raw conversation is kind of like people tend to have like a strong bias against it, and thus it can be difficult coming into Podlayer if you're used to not really having conversations really authentic about some of the things you're dealing with. Having that kind of temple conversation, it can be more challenging to work on your personal flaws because you probably are going to be less likely to see them.
Yeah, I know. I totally know what you mean. People just aren't really used to dialoguing at the level that we have to here. So, yeah, it's very true. And that needs to really be a part of any really robust culture, which there's very few of in this world right now. That just needs to be said.
Sure.
For whatever good that there is, there's a lot of just nihilism and degeneracy. All right, and then I guess as a last point, teaching and education, obviously those things interest me, and I've been around in the education system a little bit, and obviously I'm disappointed with it, and so I'm interested in ways, again, motive is a very important aspect of any way you would want to do that. Interested in kind of thinking about what is a way a society or culture should teach people and implementing that better. Educate. Yeah, so that's pretty much where I'm at right now.
Good. That was really good. That gave me a lot better idea of what you got going on there. I have a few high-level things that are kind of just for all of you, but they kind of came to me as Mitchell was going. First is, I think there's 2 beats that you should probably do something on, because I was thinking about this, the fact that we all share some rather, say, for example, atheistic views. Not that we identify as atheists, we're Podlayer, but there is that element, perhaps, and not that you have to give it that word. And I was actually thinking about, what would be the proper thing? And I think I've come up with it. Basically, there's 2 topics I think people do need to know about you, which is what are your politics and what is your procedure. I'm going to call it politics and procedure. And generally speaking, I guess really they're both politics in a way, but the 2 elements are this. One is where you come down on personal responsibility, you need to survive. You know, on the farthest end would be, say, maybe objectivism or something, versus a sense of community, a sense of if you have a lot, you should share with other people in the tribe. That basic question.
Oh, yeah.
Where, and whatever it is,
Kind of
fine.
relating.
Yeah, basically, what is your take
Yeah.
on
On that.
on that? I think, and you don't have to use political words if you don't want to. You can just say it in poetic or whatever. But
Yeah.
addressing, I think a lot of people, and being able to express this, just so you know, all the beats are like to a degree. These two are going to be a lot like this, which is they may repel some people, but they're also going to attract the people you like, because you're going to kind of announce, oh, politically on like, you know, yep, you keep what you get versus you should share. Do you mean that?
Yeah.
Your opinion? You should have. First of all, any philosopher should have an opinion. Any seeker should have an opinion on that question, and you should not be afraid to voice your opinion on that. So I don't tell you guys what your opinion should be. Just you should actually have an opinion, and you should be willing to express it and hear people's reactions. The other one is this: evidence versus faith/feelings. And again, you don't have to have the same views I do, although we obviously have certain agreements because of how Podler is on degrees 1, 2, and 3. But there's room for interpretation on, you know, degree 4 areas, so forth. So the question is where do you actually fall on the importance? Because they're both important. That's key. And that's why everyone wants to know what your take on it is. So that
Would
would
you
be
include like rationalism in that as well?
yes. So basically, kind of like that kind of the procedure when it comes to making your decisions, when it comes to like how you go about it, you know, what sort of directs more, what gives purpose or sureness more, what calls to you more, what is, you know, more important. So those two. So I think all of you should have that, because myself, having done this already, I'm pretty happy with the way I did it before, but there are a few things I wish perhaps I had gotten in there, and they are these two questions. And I will be addressing this as soon as I get you guys on your own, kind of doing your L11 and beyond stuff. I look forward to joining with you and getting my stuff out there some more too. And those are 2 points myself I really feel I should address because they really separate sort of even might really like a person, but they really separate how you approach talking. For example, right there, all those topics that you said, now they may actually be because, oh, Mitchell likes mathematics, then obviously, you know, he likes logic. But other things aren't as obvious. Other things like perhaps his interest in astronomy or things like that. It's important to note how the mind that is addressing all these things prioritizes. Do you know what I mean? As far as like evaluating truth, how do you evaluate truth? How do you pursue truth? What has more importance? And you can give whatever cocktail you want. You say like a little of this, a little of that, however you want to do it, but you should be able to express that because that will become a recurring theme. I've noticed that if you look at most comments on YouTube, there's certain things that come up over and over and over again. One, separate from those two, is the general battles of being funny, of having, you know, I gotcha information, blah, blah, blah. And those actually have room for more flexibility to some degree. These other ones are areas that it's not they can't be moved, but they're harder to move, and they tend to be the firm surfaces in these debates that go on everywhere. And they are, you owe humanity something, something. No, I don't. Each person owes themselves what they get. What they get and what they do, they're owed that. And that basic fundamental, I think, you know, obviously it's not like one side's absolutely right, but that tends to be it doesn't matter what political subject you're talking about, what philosophical subject you're talking about, that theme, your opinion on it, and why. The other one is when you actually say why you believe as far as authority, what you base authority on. And that tends to get into things like, you know, are you evidence-based? Are you faith-based? Are you feelings-based? Things of that nature. Make sense? So you should have something on those two beats. I will say that you have to. I don't want to actually force it, but myself, if you have any beats open to get to 36 or whatever, I'd highly recommend that because it will actually get you to deeper conversations quickly. Those 2 beats, if you talk to a person who actually agrees with you or disagrees with you, either way, you will notice a strong reaction. It will increase the energy of the conversation.
Either
Yeah.
yay or nay. Right?
Either yay or nay.
I have interests in politics, and I at one point was quite interested in atheism versus like Christianity. I identified with as being an atheist. I think that would probably be a good like segue for me, or a good way to talk about, is I can talk about my experiences, being an atheist, my experiences, being interested in politics, and that would probably make it,
Excellent. As long as you're interested in politics, you do mention like some of your political views.
Yes, of course. Yeah, I'm not just gonna like talk. Yeah, I'm not gonna say I'm interested in politics, then talk about like abstract it away from like
Right.
talking about
Let's talk about politics. So this is how a computer works.
Right.
I mean, that could be a good introduction. I could talk about how computer works and then segue into how I think political systems should work.
If you think this were like a computer, yeah. Sure.
I mean, I could totally make an analogy to computer. How good systems run.
The 2 more high-level things. One is you want to make sure, I've already said this before, I was kind of highlight now that we're getting a little firmer on things, that each beat is also talking about you. So for example, in the case of Mitchell, when you're talking about some of those things like your AI or whatever, is I think you have a lot of things about consciousness and the understanding of it that you find interesting. Each of those beats, you could put one of those in about why.
Yeah, and I was thinking,
Why
even just as it
practice?
relates to those last 2 beats, like the politics and procedure sort of stuff, that really actually fits very well into some of my bigger beats in the middle, actually, because I'm going to be talking about just my interests. I was really going to talk about, kind of go through philosophy a little bit and what I think about all of that, and obviously both of those things sort of can fit into there.
Excellent. So then the last one is just that since you'll be doing this a lot, both vlogging and then in person, you should be. We've talked before about as far as like helping people to understand Podler easier. There's the size of it, and that things that they don't understand at the beginning seem very strange to them. So we're going to be having it to where we have the website that we have now is going to be basically like the campus. That's for people who are all in trying to level up. Then there's the underground temple. That's for people who are all in for the community. They don't necessarily want to be leveling up, but they actually want to be talking Podler. But then we're going to have another thing, which is what Ben and I are kind of working on, is going to be the initial stop for people who are just learning about it. They may be critics of it. They're just trying to canvas it some, whatever. And that's going to be focusing strictly on the phenomenon, which this brings up the wordage, which is being able to switch between saying mojo and qualia. So qualia is basically like the English word for it, and mojo is the universal word for it. And then same things as far as like the categories, is categorizing it by say, Jai-ni, or by color coding, pink, purple. So you can, those are 2 adjustments that we'll be doing, is that when we have the material in the first, we will use those terms that are more mathematical and more English based. And then when it gets to the more spiritual stuff and also the more universal wording that has to work for every culture, that'll be on the site we have now. So just something to keep in your mind is that since these are, this arc is going to kind of how you meet and greet people, how you communicate, you want to make sure that you can actually use both those kind of like dialects. You know what I mean? Kind of like, I don't know the word for it, sort of like a person who understands things already. You kind of like a degree, there's kind of like a first degree dialect, and there's like degree 2 and above.
Yeah.
And technically, we could even go up to degree 2, I think, being all mathematical. But then degrees 3 and 4, you simply have to kind of bring a spiritual element in and include the strange words that go with it. So yeah, just a little kind of thing for you guys to know. Because you want this arc to be as usable as possible. So you want to be able to talk to both people on the street that you just meet and you're friendly and you're being authentic, And you can also talk to people who are already into pod layer and talk their way. And it works either way. And you can slip in between the two. Just something myself, I'm going to be working to develop as well, to be able to speak it both ways. So then, Glenn, are you ready to do yours? Real quick there before, I guess, Ben, you already gave some feedback there. It was really great. Glenn, did you have anything for Mitchell before you jump into yours? You understood it though, right?
Yeah, what Ben Mitchell was talking about his beats and stuff. I had a question about the politics one and
Sure.
the procedure. I was just a little bit unsure when it comes to that that grouping there. What exactly, like your personal procedure as far as how you personally do things, and then politically the kind of views that you hold?
Yeah,
Topics or issues?
there's these two questions basically. One is when it comes to one's responsibility as far as resources from themselves to other people. Where do you fall as far as, you know, on one side, like an extreme would be everyone is for themselves, you get what you get, do for self. And then on the other side is like, you know, everyone owes everyone like an equal.
Okay, so sort of like socialism versus like
You can say the way socialism, communism, whatever, but basically, I'll say sharing versus keeping what you got, keeping what you took or what you have, keeping that because it's yours, or there is a bond. Obviously, I think all humans are somewhere on the spectrum. I'm giving the two poles of it, and so in this beat, you kind of want to say where you fall on that and why, as far as, do you know what I mean? What is yours because you were born with that gift, or you did that hard work, or you know what I mean? You were related to so and so, versus you owe because, well, you know, other people live in the world with you, and you see their misery, and so you could alleviate that without really hurting yourself at all. So those arguments, you heard these all the time, right? Because other arguments you'll notice come up a lot, like in forums, and they'll debate actually like data points, and those can be won by better data or better representation of the data. But these ones tend to be a personal belief, and you should know what yours is and why you believe it, because it tends to underpin a lot of other things. So Glenn, that first one is where you fall on sharing versus keeping. Sharing versus keeping. If I had to boil it down, where do you fall on that? It's it's an extremely complex kind of philosophical thing, and so yeah, you
sharing versus keeping the different kinds of resources that are
right. Basically, resources are keeping it or sharing it. Where do you fall on the right way of that? What's your opinion of the right way to view that? Because that's a major thing. That is every political party, every system. They may have 2 political parties, 8 political parties. It won't matter. There is always something big in every country about, do you need to share or should you keep? And there's always a battle there. Those who have a lot already, either talent or resource or legacy, they tend to be pro keep, and those who don't are pro share. And then in the middle are varying opinions. So that phenomenon is pretty much throughout history. So you want to have a kind of an opinion on how that should be dealt with, because that's a continual contention point, a tense point in human communities throughout history all over the world. The other one is, what counts as an authority when you're talking, like or when you're trying to understand what's important for you? Evidence versus say feelings. Say fidelity is another one, which is related to feelings, but slightly different, and also faith. So kind of the 3 F's there. So and both sides have some merit to them, because they don't exactly overlap, but there's relation there between, say, literal and interpretive. But it's also how you believe they should talk to each other. So in any for example, different courts throughout the world, that's a major thing, is what counts as far as presentation, and how should the people who are observing the case be put forward? How should they take presentation's influence? Does that make sense? I'm trying to keep it very vague there so that you don't feel pinned in. But to give it some flavor, this tends to, not always, but tends to come up, for example, in belief in the supernatural. Yeah. If not that you have to make it about that, but addressing this point generally, or not generally, but very most common, it comes up in people's opinion of the supernatural, or opinion, feeling versus pushback of, say, more hard data. So fuzzy data versus firm data, and often again this gets into beliefs that actually are within the realm of speculation. Or critically, what is considered speculation? For example, for some people, God spoke to me. They do not consider it speculation. There are other Christians who say God spoke to me, but they recognize that spirits speak to other people from other places, and they're okay with that. You know, the kind of new agey Christians, they're okay if, you know, you get your Dharma on, sure, why not? You know what I mean? So there's different ways you could come at that, right there. Even though both of them believe that, you know, their sort of fatherly God figure is talking to them, one of them can believe that that is a given of evidence that should be accepted, similar to other kinds to forensics. Other people are like, I believe it, but I recognize that's not forensics. And that's why, you know, as long as you're trying to be a good person, who's to say, right? Because in my day, I you know, not recently, but back in the day, I did know a lot of Christians, and there's quite a lot of variety. If you ask them certain questions, they might get the same answer, but if you push on a little bit, you tend to get a difference. For even Christianity, for example, you'll have people who will, in the same doctrine, in the same church, they will actually emphasize the you need to do work element of it. Others will emphasize you need to love others. And both are true. Do you know what I mean? But again, that element comes up. It doesn't matter what your belief system or political leanings are, whatever. That, for example, you can have people in conservative parties and liberal parties able to talk to each other if they agree on certain things. And it tends to be those two things. Because I don't know, it seemed to be like underpinnings of almost like perception and discernment.
I think that should also be another point too. How open or closed a person is on a given issue or a given topic or something like that. I think that's something that we could probably get into as well, which is kind of related there. But you're listening to what you were saying about that, it made me start thinking about, like, people have all kinds of different positions that they hold politically and, you know, in terms of feelings, faith, and fidelity and that sort of stuff. And I found myself kind of like internally dialoguing with somebody who's, say, for example, someone who's like different than me in the sense that I'm like, I consider myself an agnostic atheist, right? If you were to give it that kind of like, if you were to give it some kind of a name, obviously I'm Paul Lair, so I kind of have, you know, like you said, that as my position, if you will. But if I'm talking to someone who's like a faith-based person, they kind of have a belief in God. And there's varying degrees to how firm or loose a person is as far as like how strongly they believe in that. And one of the things that I think is really important is in any kind of relationship with another person, there has to be the ability for both people to challenge each other on their views. And I think that's really, really integral and important. You know, despite if someone gets angry or upset or whatever, there has to be the ability to dialogue about certain kind of topics and try to really work out, like, how, you know, like what a person really believes and like question it and like how much doubt you place on it, and not just taking what's given to you in a sort of like, you know, just like openly accepting it and just not questioning it all. So I'm very contrarian in the way that I think.
This is good. So this everything you're saying here, this is good stuff that I think says a lot about your character and what you're about that would be good to be able to articulate. Go ahead,
Yeah,
please.
so I think, yeah, like we're talking about me anyway, so this is, I guess, a good point for me to say is that, yeah, like it's hard for me not to be this way because I'm like this with everybody, and I want somebody who's able to be this way with me as well. Is that I'm very, contrarian in the way that I think, and I want somebody around me that's also going to be able to do that as well, or be able to do that as well, and not just sort of like be firm on something and not be able to say like, well, you know what, I'm not 100% sure. Like, doubt has to be at least somewhat partially in a person's thinking on any given topic at any point.
Sure.
So, yeah.
Agreed there. Where are you with your arc?
My arc, so yeah, I was thinking like, as we discussed before, that I would do it as far as like when I was younger, and then gradually working up to when I, present day, and then possibly even future, like what kind of plans I might have for the future as well. So that's kind of like the overall arc, I think, is more based on chronological, like my age and the things I've learned and such. And so talking about like my childhood, my early childhood, experiences with my parents, experiences with early childhood experiences that kind of like tipped me off as far as like how I am and how I work. One of the things is I noticed, this is kind of interesting. I was the kind of, I remember like my parents, they described me with mom, and I think I remember partially to a certain degree as well. I was described as being a baby when I was a baby, as being a little bit more aloof in a way. It's kind of, I think, related to the Nai, I think, but sort of like very kind of like in my own kind of head. And then at the same time, though, I was also very attached to, my mom. I would not like to be separated, and I would not like to be held by other people, other like aunties and stuff like that. And so that's kind of an interesting thing. And I think it plays a little bit more into how I did school, in that I was very much like a loner type. So I didn't really associate with a lot of people. I just kind of like went to school, dealt with that however it is that I could, avoided everybody basically, and only spoke and interacted as much as I needed to. But then at lunchtime, for example, there's like an hour, right? I would go home to eat, and then I'd go back to school. So I would try to deliberately avoid school as much as I possibly could because I was afraid of interacting with people. I was very much shy. And I would, if I had to like in order to just avoid having to deal with like the eyes of the students who would kind of look at me and be like, he's kind of weird. He's like, he doesn't have anybody that he talks to. In order to sort of like avoid that, I would always sort of like attach to like just one person, and I would just kind of like focus in on them and just make them my buddy for that class or whatever. And then it would make me feel a sense of relief, because then, maybe it was the person I was sitting beside or whatever. I would just kind of try to get to know them in order to sort of like not have to deal with just being completely alone in the classroom, and not have to be able to deal with that kind of like pressure, because I felt like I was really anxious because of that. So having that one person, it made me feel a little bit more comfortable. And then, yeah. And then also I remember this is an important point. Part of the reason why I was also anxious too during school time was I was overweight quite a bit, and I was afraid of my body and like how it came across to other people. And so I would wear layers. And then that was kind of like something that I did because I was really like shy, right? I didn't want people to look at me because I was kind of like afraid. And that was also something that kind of like, accentuated those feelings. And, it's quite interesting. There's a lot of, I was very anxiety ridden, and I'm still very much a little bit quite like that too. But now in college, like, it's gotten to the point now where I feel a lot more confident about myself because I know what I want out of school, because before I didn't really know. why I was even going there, what I was doing there, the thought of work, the thought of, like having to get a job and like having to make money. It was very much like something that daunted me and scared me and made me think like, oh, what am I going to do? And then at home, I would always be pressured by my parents to be like, you need to be good in school, you need to work towards getting a job. And I would always get into arguments with them because I didn't like the idea of having to kind of like do that, because I just something about it just didn't agree with me. But now it's gotten to the point now where it's sort of like I don't have that issue, because I know that the kind of work that I'm going to be doing, like in dietetics, and then as also I'm going to be studying further is genetics and that sort of stuff, that all has a purpose. Like I can see very clearly that there's something that I'm going to be getting out of that personally, and that I'm going to be able to provide other people with the kind of knowledge that, is that would, is going to better their lives in some kind of a way. And I'm going to be making history by doing all of this. It's kind of like, it makes me feel like proud. Like I want to do this. I want to actually get into this now, because I can see that my life is actually going to be meaningful in a way, and I can really get behind that. And it's no longer a question of whether or not I have anything that I want to do. I don't have any fears about like I'm going to become like a beggar on the street or something like that. I had these kinds of fears before. Now it's sort of like I don't have that. I have this sort of like, how quickly can I get to that point, and how much can I possibly just squeeze out of this life that I have in order to just kind of like make the most of it. And then, whether or not I'm remembered or whatever the case might be, at least my work will have changed the world in some kind of capacity that other people, when they are exposed to it, they'll be able to then take and then further, like take it further along, and so it was all worth it, and so it's funny. It's like I was scared personally, like what I was gonna do, my life, all these kinds of things. Now it's kind of flipped the exact opposite. I could care less about me in a way. It's just about like how much can I do to sort of like leave behind the best of me that I can. Generations, they can benefit from it as much as they can, and so that I can help to push the world as much as I can towards a future that's brighter, that's better. I think that's ultimately what everybody wants out of life, But yeah, it really kind of like motivates me and inspires me. It makes me feel like, it's not about me. It's not about me trying to selfishly attain wealth or something, or trying to do something in that kind of way. It's about me trying to give in some kind of like a proactive way that will help to move everything forward. So it's kind of like a bit of a 180 there. I kind of went on there, but yeah, this
is good though. It's good because this needs to come out of you. So however that does best, but we're making good progress.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll be right back. I'll just say one thing. Whoever wants to go first can. What we're going to do is, for next time, I want you guys to bring your final arc outline. So do your best you can to kind of get the final one you can. It's going to be final, but as final as you can get it, because we're going to switch. I think it's time to start going into the various ones to take away the fear of. Because right now I think you guys are feeling good about this a bit, but there's a little fear of like breaking a beat. So we'll take one each next time. May take longer than that. Do more if you can do it quick. But definitely I think one each next time we'll break. And so I'm thinking tonight we'll start. So if you guys want to talk about who wants to go first, and I'll try to get all three of you, but maybe only to get one. So
I actually have one completely written, basically. I mean, not like it's not like the final version. I'll probably change some things, but it's okay. It's full 4 sentences, and they're all packed with the beat.
Yeah, perfect. So we'll start off there, and then we'll try to get someone else as well. So I'll be right back.
All right, cool. Sounds good. Actually, I probably have multiple that I've written. Well, I have some that are kind of like, I have several bullets, but they're not really organized in senses.
Yeah, same. It's just kind of like sentences, like an idea that I want to get across.
Yeah.
It's very rough in that way, but it's kind of like, I can talk about it, like you feel like you can talk about it.
Yeah, it's kind of like like a sentence about like the sub bullet point you want to talk about, kind of, or even just a few words depending on. So you have a good so Mitchell, as far as like the scraper, have you made any are you gonna be doing anything with that tonight or tomorrow? Or I think you said
Yeah,
briefly.
we can take a look at it tonight, sure.
Okay, cool. I'd be interested to see what the results would be, or like how fast it would be and so forth.
Yeah, I'm sure this. Yeah, I'm kind of building right now. I've been thinking about. It's like I have like. I can like scrape the links, but then you wanted it in like a CSV format, right?
Yeah. That should be pretty easy.
Which should be-
It seems like you literally just like add a comma after every one, so it should be
I should be able to do that.
making a loop and just like sending it to an output file. It should be.
All right. So Ben, take it away.
Yeah, for sure. So this one's on RuneScape. That's the one I broke down. Mainly because like this one was actually kind of challenging to construct because it's there's kind of a lot to talk about as far as like what makes the implications meaningful. But let's see here. I have it. Okay, here we go. So, but yeah, I'm probably not going to say it exactly like this, but yeah, this is basically the beat. So, and I talked about this shortly after talking about my friends in Minnesota in role-playing games. So my friends in Minnesota in around 5th grade were really into an extremely popular browser-based MMO game called RuneScape. The game is very repetitive as far as like the controls are concerned and so forth, but it makes up for this by including a massive character sheet of around 25 skills, each of which typically take people several months to master. I spent a good 153 days of my life playing on my main account alone, with the sheer immersion I had in my childhood and early teens exploring this massive online world and finding all the different things to do in it. RuneScape has given me invaluable written communication, technical problem-solving skills, as well as a fascination and love for open worlds, fantasy, and role-playing that I may not otherwise have had to the degree that I do now.
Excellent.
So yeah, that's the beat.
Excellent. Something I think sounds good as it is now. Something that little things you can do to tweak to give a little more meaning can be very small sometimes. So, for example, that last sentence. Can you read the last sentence again?
Yes. RuneScape has given me invaluable written communication and technical problem-solving skills, as well as a...
Pause there. Perfect. Okay,
Yep.
so you guys, he's basically saying that if you put in front of that, as games often do, comma.
Sure. Sounds like
By
it.
the way,
Oh yeah, I'm not gonna do it just because you're telling me to do it. Yeah.
But those, so you can use it or you can use something else. But I'm trying to show you how little thing can be there. Do you see as nothing? The beat is already great, but a little thing like that. If he says as games often do or as games can, however you want to word it, he's actually saying his view on games, gamification, game theory, games as education. He's actually, do you see, just by adding that little fragment at the front of it, it's, you know what I mean, all the information that you had there is still great, it backs it up, but it also kind of gives a little bit more of your take on things, your headspace. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Not saying you have to use that one, you could use that there or something else, or even some of the sentences, but little things like that can help make it connected to you and what you're about and your headspace and your heart space, what they are.
Yeah. And this is nice because I did this in 4 sentences, so I actually have room for one more if I need to.
Nice.
Of course, 4 sentences I'm sure is fine, but
Oh yeah, for sure.
it's 4 is a good number because it both like it's like long enough, like it's not like a really short beat, but you can also like add another sentence if you need to.
Yeah, the range you're going for is 3 to 5 sentences. Yeah, 4 is right there. Bam, sweet spot.
Yeah, and then if you need to remove one, then you still are within
Or
range.
add one too. Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
Okay, so that sounded great. So now, why don't you go and do that again, Ben, and read it at a nice, comfortable pace, like it feels good. You're not rushing at all. And then time yourself.
Time myself. Should I actually set a timer, or should I like just mentally keep track? Or?
I'll set a timer if you can. If not, I can try to find one.
Oh yeah, I can do that real quick. Like count down, but I'll keep track how long it is. Google has a nice little timer feature.
I have it bookmarked.
Oh, cool.
Just let me know when, and then I can start it.
No, I've got it up right here.
Okay.
So, all right. So my friends in Minnesota in around 5th grade were into an extremely popular browser-based MMO game called RuneScape. This game is very repetitive, but it makes up for this by including a massive character sheet of around 25 skills, each of which typically take people several months to master. I've spent a good 153 days of my life playing on my main account alone with the sheer immersion I had in my childhood and early teens exploring this massive online world and finding all of the different things to do in it. As games often do, RuneScape has given me invaluable written communication and technical problem-solving skills, as well as a fascination and love for open worlds, fantasy, and role-playing that I may not otherwise have to the degree that I do now.
Boom, how'd it come in?
It took just over a minute.
Perfect. Bam. So there you go. So you feel it? So it's a minute's a good amount. It's a good amount of information. It's a standard that you have to kind of work to get to, but it makes for a very nice punchy nugget.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's kind of interesting. It didn't feel like it was that long, but I don't know, I guess, yeah. Because I think we tend to read beats really quickly. We're kind of used to that with
Yes.
track 2, but in practice, you're not going to be like, going blah, 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 most of the time at least.
Right.
So,
That's perfect.
sometimes I do talk quickly, but usually for things like, if you're like introducing, something they may not have heard of before, generally you don't want to like race by things.
Yeah, for sure.
You
And
can
so,
roughly keep track of like how many words you use there, and so that future beats are like more or less around that same length.
yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting because we can do it in terms of sentences, and there's also doing it in terms of words, because sentences can sometimes get like really long compared to like you can have a short sentence, it's like 3 words sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. So that's why I said 3 to 5 sentences. But you're right. Actually, you can
So
really
it's-
just go by the word count. But
Yep.
but in your head, structurally, you kind of need to have like a point to point to point, like an arc within it. So you do have to think in terms of sentences too, because sentences make the arc, but the size of it overall, you're right, is word count.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah, that's like the best measure I can think of.
Yeah,
Or size.
and I think that's fine. And it's okay if it's a little over a minute. I think pretty much 45 seconds up to like say 75 seconds. You know what I mean? Like a little less, 15 seconds less or 15 seconds more. I think it's a nice range.
Yeah. Another thing is the length of time is going to correspond with the word count. Actually, I think time might even be better than word count, because in practice, some words might be longer than others, and
That's true.
if you have a really like verbose beat
Right.
and so forth, it's kind of but yeah, I think good metrics are good to keep track of.
Additional, when I do these myself, I use all 3. I
Mhm.
tend to think initially in terms of bullet points, of major points, and then those turn into sentences. That makes the arc. Then from there, I will add or reduce the word count if I think it's a little there. And then you're right. Then I actually speak it out, and I find how it just sounds. And then if it actually audibly takes too long or too little, then I will adjust from there. So actually, you're right. It's not a question of which one to use. You kind of do a little of each design along the way. I'll just add one more thing. Again, you don't have to use this at all. In fact, I'm not going to say what word I was even thinking because I wasn't really thinking a word. But you read the sentence again, please, where you use the word immersion.
Immersion. Yes. So I've spent a good 153 days of my life playing on my main account alone with the sheer immersion I had in my childhood and early teens, exploring this massive online world and finding all of the different things to do in it.
Nice. Okay, so again, this is kind of like a fine thing you can do, and it doesn't tend to change the overall thing, or as far as like the arc, and it doesn't change the delivery time very much, but it can add a lot of extra bonus. So you said the word sheer immersion, right?
Yes.
Okay, immersion is a thing. It's a distinct thing. It's good. It's a good descriptive word. And sheer, that's a good word too. That gives the idea of volume. But you didn't, not that you need to, but you didn't use a tonal adjective, which if you decide to, could add a lot. So sheer pleasurable immersion, sheer escapist immersion, sheer challenging immersion. There's a nearly infinite words you could pick, but just adding that one adjective to immersion says a lot about you. The fact that immersion was pleasurable or was compulsive, was captivating, any adjective you use will say a lot about you. And that's just one word.
Huh. Cool. Yeah, I think I'll add something there.
Yeah, those are all things you can kind of do at the end. All right, excellent. Does anyone else want to try something? If you don't have anything done, we can actually take it from the theme and try to work it out. We can do that process, kind of like go through, like make it a little like beats, and then little points, and then we'll see if we can determine the sentences. Does anyone feel ready for that? Mitchell or Glenn?
I just have a question. Are we trying to take several sentences and just put them all together into a single? Like, I'm kind of trying to understand, how should the paragraphs, the 3 to 5 sentences, be, like, what's the structure there? Like, the first sentence, what is that trying to do?
Okay, so let me talk how this might be helpful for you. If you're not used to doing this, maybe you are, but just not used to kind of dialing in on it. You want to know why it's there. That's the theme. Okay, next, why is it important? Why are we talking about this? You want to come up with at least 3 things of why you brought this topic up. 3 to 5. 3 to 5 things. They don't have to be in this key. They don't have to be in any order. Next, from there, we'll turn each one of those into a standalone sentence to just make the point that you want to make. Then those sentences can be arranged in any order once they're, because sometimes you have to kind of write the sentence out to know what would make sense to go first. And then you adjust the wording so that the one sentence flows into the next. Topic idea, important points of why is brought up. Each point gets a sentence, then kind of do a little, shuffle on the sentences to see what order makes most sense, and then adjust a little bit of wording so that the sentences kind of set each other up. Just kind of like as far as the verbiage. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think I'll probably have to just like actually get the.
Right. So let's take.
We'll start playing with it.
I can come back if Mitchell has something. I can do that. If not, I can try to take you from there, Glenn. Mitchell, you have a beat that you're.
I think Mitchell can go before me.
All right.
I didn't have one ready, but.
Is there a topic that you just find interesting that's on your head right now? Because we can just take any of them.
Jeez. So how long are these beats exactly? I mean, I know we were just discussing that, but like, so how long? Like, Ben, how long was the beat you used? Like, sentence-wise, how many sentences?
3 to 5. They're going to be 3 to 5 sentences.
Yeah, mine was 4 sentences, took slightly over a minute. But yeah, 3 to 5.
Wow, that actually is pretty short. So.
Yeah, all these since they're important topics to you, they'll be charged. Every sentence will be
Yeah, I was gonna say I can imagine myself saying like 4 paragraphs on most of these.
The upside is it's a good problem to have. It means you actually have a lot of good content.
But yeah, that's not really a problem because if I really want to talk about it, well, I can.
Yeah,
I don't have
you
to.
can.
That's right.
Yeah, all you got to do is find a way to break the one that's like four paragraphs into
Exactly. Just break
4
the ice.
beats. You know. Yeah. So.
So either one, Mitchell or Glenn, either one.
Okay, why don't we work on one of my things here, which is typology. For me.
Okay. So first thing is what beat are you thinking is going to go before it, and what's going to go after it? That'll help.
Okay, so before typology would have to be interest in just like I did psychological tests kind of stuff. That's kind of like came before typology.
Okay, so kind of psychology angle. All right.
Yeah, psychology kind of angle. It was all under the main heading, though, of like trying to want to understand myself better, which is something that I've been trying to do all my life, really. But it kind of took a more psychological bent at this kind of point in my life.
Gotcha.
Which started with like the psychological tests, and then that eventually then led me into then personality testing, which then led me into typology, that sort of thing, which is basically personality testing.
Okay. So then,
and afterwards came Podlara, of course.
Okay, great. Okay, so then let's talk. Why don't you talk to me a little bit about typology? What I think are some important things? I guess we can start with there. I can give you a very simple 3-act structure that might be helpful for you all.
Sure.
Which is why it's good to know what comes before and after. Okay, so how did what came before move here? And it sounds like you already told me that. So we'll say psychology is going to be psychology general and just, self-discovery general was before it, right?
Yeah.
So personality evaluations.
Yeah.
That could be the first sentence. And so basically or first thing. So personality test. Then you have typology because like full. And then since you went to Podlara next, then dissatisfaction. That's a simple 3-sentence arc. So personality types and things like it led you in. Second sentence is typology, what you liked about it, what was interesting about it, why you studied it for as long as you studied it. And that could be that middle area can be 1 to 3 sentences. It's often where the flex comes, the middle area. And then the last sentence is then why you were moving on. And you're saying you could obviously take any of those points and make them either 1 or 2 sentences more.
Right. Okay. So I just have some things I have written down here that I want to run by you, and you can just tell me. So what I really liked about the whole psychology typology thing was it was very personal. It was telling you information about yourself on a personal level. It wasn't saying like, it was teaching you about like, oh, so this is the kind of person that you are, given the kind of answers that you put in. And that in and of itself is just very appealing, or it was really appealing to me at that time. And it still kind of is in other ways. Like I like to learn about like, my interests and then how predictable I am, in a certain way. Like if there's an algorithm out there that can actually define me in a certain way. And so that was really interesting. So that psychological thing, it taught me about that. And this is also partially when I got interested in like understanding sleep, dreams and dream interpretation and that sort of thing. That's also like really personal, right? It tells you a lot about yourself. So that's kind of like one of the things I liked about it. Typology was different in that it started to categorize different, archetypes, right? And so I like that too. I like the different types and the different kind of groupings that there were. Like there was this personality type and that personality type, and it's like they're all different from each other and they're all unique in a certain way. They all have certain gifts. And I was kind of like trying to understand and find out what my personal gifts were. And then eventually I had to leave because the same thing that made it so interesting was also the same thing that kind of like was its weakness, in that it was providing a lot of personal choice in, like, you can be whatever it is that you want to be, but after I took it to a certain degree, that didn't appeal to me anymore. I wanted to not simply get answers that, were given, like certain kind of answers that I put into the test. I wanted to know something actually more, more with validity, more repeatable, something that could not be denied. It was absolute in the way that it described me. And so at the same time, that was kind of, that was also a bit scary, because I was like, oh, what if I don't like the answer that I get? I'm kind of stuck with it. But at the same time, it was really appealing, because it's like, well, even though it might not be something that I like, it's still going to be powerful, because knowing more about yourself is always beneficial. And so,
Just right there, I think I've heard a good beat there. It sounds like you're starting to bleed into kind of pod layer there. So I think that's a really good place to pause there. That you gave a lot. I heard, I think, 5 sentences or 5 points.
Okay.
This is what I thought I heard.
I just want to ask a question.
Sure.
It seems like as I read these kinds of things, I'm just kind of like saying them automatically in a way, right? And then having to actually type them out, it seems kind of a bit like a step that may not necessarily be needed. But
oh, yes, it is. Yes, absolutely it is.
Okay.
Yeah, just you're going to resist that because your V doesn't like the effort. Just it doesn't. And then your G also doesn't like showing itself in a way that can be on permanent record. You have to resist that. This is writer's block if you want to get past, because in your head, it then can just be amorphous, but you really do want to try to get down your best rendering, because once you do that, you can improve it. And you have that bar of like, what's the best way I can do this in 45 to 75 seconds?
All right. I see.
And so you if you didn't write it down, Glenn, technically, just to be absolutely technical on this, you technically don't have to write it down. You would have to record yourself though. You would need to record yourself on film and watch yourself and go, oh, I could have said this word here. Oh, I could have put more emphasis here. You know what I mean? Oh, I could say a little faster or slower. I should enunciate that more. I should take more of a pause between sentence 3 and 4, things like that. You have to kind of do it and then react to it. You mean you have to put out a full effort. Writing's good because it's kind of like a script of what you're going to say. But either way, you'll have to kind of make some, that's my best shot out of my head. And then take your best shot and record it. And then improve that. That's where the power comes from, because most humans don't do this. The same power you have, Glenn, just because you mull on stuff more and you imagine having conversations with people more than other people do, right there, that's the same power. And it makes the words and things you say have more boom, you know what I mean? Have more importance and more stick. So doing this, realizing, okay, I need to chop it up into around a minute and then do that and then keep improving it. The same way, it's gonna keep going. Once you get it down, you'll start using it at various people you meet, and you'll see how they react, and you'll see how you need to adjust it, and you'll continue to do it, because you have to actually use it publicly and then analyze what it was. And that,
right, because there's always,
that adds power every time. You're saying?
Yeah, it can always be improved in a certain way, right? Like,
yes.
Knowing what you want to say and knowing, the words, it's important.
Yes, it can always be improved, but there are certain points that either G and G and V, you need to kind of say it out loud, write it down, record yourself, say it to a friend, say it actually to a stranger. You had to kind of like perform it. There's no way to actually improve by keeping the performances. Like, you mean like simulator performances are amazing. I'm a big fan of the simulator, but there's a certain point where it's done enough of that and you can't level up without actually saying stuff out loud and actually like walking it out. That's the next level of improving it.
Right, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Okay, so here are the 5 points I heard. Each one can make a nice sentence as you did there. Personality type stuff, basically coming off of psychology. It sounded like you introduced to me the concept that isn't necessarily psychology of qualia. You like the idea that they address people by qualia, because that's kind of what separates personality type from other psychology, is it emphasizes qualia. And then it sounds like you saying that you found other things such as sleep cycles, and you can add other things in there you want. There's a variety of things that you found interesting about the qualia you might have. Then it sounds like third, typology is one that really got your attention a lot, and you seem to like that it was more mathematical than the others. It was more intricate. Its logic was more seamless than some of the others. It was more specific. There were some of the things that kind of got what you were saying.
Yeah, defined in a way. Yeah.
Yeah, defined, exactly. Orderly. It almost kind of how you found the orderliness of it and the preciseness of it, or the particularness of separating the different things from each other. You seem to like that. I don't know how you want to word that. That's kind of what it sounded to me. Then the fourth thing I think I heard was that it started to bother your kind of inner understanding of how things work, that it was opinion based. Something kind of told you that generally speaking, truth is not opinion based. And then you moved on looking for something that was going to take it out of the hands of opinion, including your own opinion. Because although it was scary, that would actually most likely be truer. Does that sound right?
Yeah. So I got, okay, so the first beat is qualia reading through personality, psychology, dream interpretation, which then eventually led me into typology. That's the first one, right?
What I heard, but you don't have exactly. I gave 5, but you could do it in 4. I heard you basically kind of say with personality, you liked that it brought in qualia, that it was about you, right? You really emphasize it's about me. I answer certain questions, and that tells me about me. Besides typology, all personality things kind of like, you tell them about yourself, and then you kind of find out predictions of you. So about yourself, qualia, predictions of you. That's kind of what I got in the first sentence. The second one is a kind of maybe like a little variety, you can say real quick, of things that caught your attention because of that, such as sleep cycles, maybe individual dieting needs, or blah blah blah, whatever you want to say there. And that sentence there, I think that sentence could be there, or it could be folded into the first one. Okay. But then sentence 3 is typology and the things you did find neat about it. 4 is that it's opinion based, and that kind of bothers you. That probably didn't seem like it was gonna be right. And then you were looking then for something that was going to be more evidence-based, not opinion, which scares you, but you like. Does that sound?
So
like your thoughts?
Okay, so the third beat was the one where there's a little bit of a difference between what I have here. You said like what I liked about typology, so the categorizing, that kind of thing?
Yeah, so I think maybe it's just 4 sentences. You can basically do qualia and maybe actually fold in personality and sleep cycles, whatever, in that one sentence. That's sentence 1. Sentence 2 is typology, why you liked that. Sentence 3 is why you thought it probably wasn't going to be strong enough for you. And then 4 is what you were looking for to be strong. Evidence, not opinion based.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that kind of like gets it.
So 4 sentence, you like a 4 sentence structure?
A 4 sentence, I think I might play around with it a little bit, because I feel like I want to fold in a few other points that are kind of written out here and kind of like scattered throughout my document here. Okay. But yeah, I think. So
tell you what,
4 or 5 kind of sentences, I think is.
Okay, so Glenn, for next time, try to do both these things, but if you can't try to do at least one. Fill out the rest of your outline so you have that arc, or write this beat out. If you can, do both, but try to do at least one, and that's what we'll go for next time. Does that sound good?
Yeah, I think I'll definitely try for that, yeah.
All right, Mitchell, we have like about 7 minutes left. Do you have something you want to play with? We'll just say to kind of tease it out.
The hardest thing I'm finding in picking a beat, it's not that I don't have things to say, it's that I often have so many things to say that I almost want to think about it more to decide what I want to say of those things. because I'm worried like no matter what I say now, I'm gonna think of something else that I want to add.
Well, in that case, when that happens, Mitchell, something that can be helpful to do is to try and pick a beginning and just work from there. In your case, you've already broken down to 3 segments of the arc. So I would pick one of those segments, the first segment, but I'll do the second or third one too, and take the beginning of that and write that one, because that will give you some concreteness of things you've already said. And then each beat that comes after it, you already know things you have covered, and that will affect what goes in. I mean, you want to be thinking like, what if I need to add this? What do I need to add that? There will be things that have been unloaded.
Yeah, I don't think there's a huge difficulty in general in writing these beats. I do think I'll be able to find something to say. It's just, I mean, right now, in coming up with something to say, like, I would want to maybe look at some of these beats and, like, lay out everything I'd want to say and then, like, narrow it down from there.
Okay.
Of that.
All right, in that case.
So I guess I can do that. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, okay. I'm going to try to play around that. That's good.
Let's see. Let me pick one that I want to actually do that all.
Yeah, 'cause only like 5 minutes left anyway. We can kind of start teasing at it.
Okay. Okay, why don't we do, actually going a little bit of the theme, we can do the typology beat.
Cool.
That's not a hard one. So what are all the things I could possibly say about it? Like when I got into it in the first place. So the introversion thing was actually separate because that was actually sort of what drew me to it. So that'll be its own thing. So this is just about typology. That may be its own several beats. But so this is not actually a beat. It's not really polished enough to be.
Oh, no, of course not. No, no. We're starting spooling now.
Yeah. So I originally took the test. I think the very first time I took it, I actually got ISFJ, and I think the reason that maybe I did is that I took a version of it at my freshman year of high school. This is not all going in deep. Where it was like it gave you like what you would do in a situation. And it related to like academic subjects and stuff. And I think I probably said that I was like good with details and stuff, which I can be. So that's probably like when I was talking about like English stuff, like I was actually better with details and like reading between the lines. So like that's maybe I thought it was ISFJ. But it's funny, it actually almost got like the Jez Hunter icon. But I don't know. So that's interesting. But I don't think that was very accurate. So at that point, it didn't interest me much. That was actually when I was still even learning more about like introversion and stuff. But then I took it again and got INTJ, and that's where it really started interesting me for the first time more. And I took a kind of cursory glance at it. Then I took it again about a year later and got INTP. Then I really started getting into it, and it was like an obsession. And I kept like probably every few weeks or so would like go back and forth thinking as a different type of like INTJ or INTP mainly. And I would just look through all the different like models out there. Yeah, there's like Vicky Joe and John Beebe and Lenore Thompson. I got books. I have several books over there and MBTI stuff. And yeah, like I loved the topic and I really wanted to get to the bottom of it, but I never could. That was the frustrating thing, because I just never felt like I ever was getting a decisive answer. So I just kept looking and looking and looking. And then, well, I finally learned about NIG, and I was like, even then, I don't think I embraced it immediately, but
yeah. So it sounds like for you, you were actually, you heard about, you might be the only one that was like that. I'm sure the other guys were. So you actually heard about Podler while you were on like a typology forum.
Kind of. Yeah, I wasn't really even on the forum, but I was looking at the forum.
Right.
I wasn't a member. Yeah.
But basically, you were actually perusing.
Researching. Yeah.
Typology
I
materials.
found Demas. He had a very famous thread on an ITB forum called like Cognitive Functions 101, and he was using your work basically to do it. That was actually back when you really had you were actually still using OBK terminology back then. You were like it was like a NIFE
Oh yeah.
and stuff. Yeah. So
Yeah,
that was a
pretty
really
into
famous
it.
one. Everyone loved Demas back then, like on INTP forum. Like he was really popular for a while, and then all of a sudden he became like this controversial figure, and the alternative.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
But they used it when they didn't know that.
He
So
was-
like I don't.
Yeah, I was pretty into.
Just everyone was like, yeah, this is really interesting and it really makes a lot of sense. But as soon as the brand of Podler came out, then it's kind of like, oh, what is this? You know, what are these words? Blah blah blah. They kind of like recoiled.
Well, I think there were some of the words.
There were a
but-
lot of heated debate too.
But I think the words were part of it, but I think the bigger part was actually we were correcting several of their givens.
We were correcting, and there was a lot of like fighting between like Demas and Auburn
And there was
stuff. And it was like,
there was kind of like, I remember very much so, like they
I
were,
thought we were too opinionated.
they didn't
Yeah.
like that we were being so firm.
And I wasn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Firm, not just firm, but also there's no way around it. Informing on their work where they actually look like they, are kind of stumbling. They're just kind of fumbling around, which I mean they are, and I mean we're gonna be friendly about it next time. But I mean, there's no way of taking that away. I mean, they're not really.
They have the
working.
wrong answers.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah.
It's just fact.
That sometimes even makes the greatest of minds kind of like a little bit, recoil. They don't like
Yeah.
it when you correct their work. It's just kind of like,
It's true.
man.
So, but anyway, so next time we will. As
I wanted to say something and then I got
sorry.
interrupted like twice.
I heard.
So-
I apologize. I'm sorry.
Yeah. I guess I just want to talk about briefly because you actually asked us, like, I don't know if you guys were, involved with typology forms and doing that kind of stuff too.
Yeah.
I that's actually one of the things that I did like ridiculously. Like that was actually probably my main focus was typology forms. And I saw like Demas's threads in the past, even before he involved Podler. And funnily enough, I didn't even know he was that was I didn't even know about Podler at the time. Like I saw this one thread, like the many faces of the INFJ, because that's what I thought I was at the time. And I didn't even know like anything about it. And then like I found out later that he was the one who wrote it.
Nice.
That was my experience as well, actually.
So I was going to say, adding on that is that when we talk and we don't freak people out with either the terminology, but often it's the implications as well. So the terminology and the implications, if we can kind of stay focused on the quality of phenomenon, the physiological cues, the very kind of more technical sounding terminology, I think then kind of as Demas did, because I've seen you guys did post everything to talk. We just sound, as we are, very well informed, very well reasoned, and that kind of shines. So next time we will try to be friendlier, and we will try to focus specifically on the qualia phenomenon and observing it. Kind of like first degree, we'll kind of separate first degree from the rest of the degrees, and that will be the one we focus on whenever we're talking to new people, and we don't engage in the other degrees of talking unless it's something they're interested in. That's probably something I would just do to make things better for me, because I know people are more comfortable talking that way, and it respects it both ways. We'll have it where we can talk the way you want in the universal way and spiritual topics, but at the same time we can converse completely authentically and very impressively, very technically, in just the first degree material. It's taken me a while to actually kind of get the whole theory kind of teased out and then separate it into degrees. And now I've been able to do that. I can see kind of being able to speak in a strictly first degree dialect. I think that would be very good to be able to do.
Yeah, I think that's a good approach. I think we're much more refined about like how we want to approach people now than we were before. And we're going to develop this more, obviously, as we get into, as we get into, like more online outreach in the future, and what typology probably being like the next one we do, I imagine.
Yeah, online outreach will be a big part of our track 4 training.
Yeah, it seems like that's also, it's just like it seems like the most convenient, typically, at least from what I've seen so far, for outreach.
For reaching out to people who are likely to have certain interests and so forth. Yeah, it's the best way, I think, for sure. And most convenient.
And of course, in-person outreach is, obviously going to be very important as well. But it seems like so.
But our plan is that as part of the outreach, we're probably doing a lot of like reach outs, response videos, things like that. And when we do, we will get a lot of reaction back, and that will train us. That will teach us how to refine better. But I already learned enough from our last engagement to know that I needed to get the data a lot bigger and cleaner, and that we need to separate out certain sections because they set off different parts of people's brains.
Yeah, I feel like this is going to because right now, the concept of outreach can be challenging because we're so thin, we're so small and thinly spread out. But once we once you get to the point where you have several members within one city, you can actually start holding events, and that supercharges things because you have this whole network that can actually perform really big and connective events. So it's.
We should probably call it to get too late, but I'll just kind of end on this thought that that's true, trending up to larger sizes. But let's not forget what starts it, which is just one person. And that's what I'm training you guys to do, which is why before we get to the track 4 training, I want to make sure you guys are badasses at track 2, meaning you are very well canvassed in your beliefs. You're very used to expressing them and so forth, so that as Ademus did for you, because I did that to Ademus, which is he came from that background and he had basically conquered everything to a degree that you guys are impressed with. And then he met me. He talked with me. He listened to or read the things that I wrote down, and the way it described things, the way it laid things out, it had power to it. And the beginning of movements, you need the first people that would be to meet them. You stand out as being very well versed and fair-minded in the way that you come at things and dedicated. So I think that when we go to track 4, my plan is that you guys will be deep into track 2. I'm thinking L15 or beyond. So you've done all these requirements and you've been vlogging about your personal interests. You've really kind of just gotten a lot of that out. And at some point when you're I want to get feedback, I really want that, well, you can just go poke people, but you may get more feedback than you want. So the idea is we're going to get really, really trained and get your thoughts out there talking. And first we'll respond to each other. That's going to get a lot of things right there, is just listening to each other's vlogs and responding to them. That's going to be very charged. And just the 4 of us right here and the other people who are on the underground temple, just hearing that amount of feedback will teach us a lot.
Yeah, Mitchell already has a vlog. It's really I know you've been watching and stuff. It's really cool. So it's going to be probably kind of like that,
sure.
In our own way.
And just I'm excited. We should get going on, but I'm excited to actually do response videos to you guys. So we kind of start by maybe response videoing each other. Do you know what I mean? Maybe see if we can get a few other people like Neo Megas in the action. And so we'll have some experience with doing that. And I can tell you, having been to different dojos, you can be a small dojo with only a handful of people. If they're all very good and very dedicated, you will kick ass at tournaments. I mean, as long as you have enough people to actually do a little bit of back and forth with, then if they're good, you'll be very, very good.
It really strengthens your opinions and your confidence. In a way that's warranted, because if you do this kind of if you have these kinds of conversations, that really gives you a better sense of where you stand on certain things, and then it gives you confidence that's more deserved because you're actually being challenged by having these kinds of conversations, putting yourself out there and having discussion, open dialogue about things.
Confidence and on this gracefulness, because some stuff, this gets back to Glenn White, to say stuff and then have to say stuff publicly. You kind of have to, because there's just energy that happens with that's not in one's head, and then you get to where you're and you get to be confident, but also a little bit more at ease. Particularly, you start talking about politics and stuff, you tend to get charged up, a little angsty. If you get to where you're used to having a conversation, it gives you an admirable amount of grace. All right, we should sign off, and then we'll go. One thing real quick is just the Ademus effect. I had it on him, so that's twice, but also all of the people I've been listening to, like Sargon of Akkad and things like that, they start the same way. They just put their opinions out, and over time, people listen to them, and even people would argue with them, their arguments back. The back and forth, like Ademus, was just so impressive. That's how they built their base up. But I think ourselves, we need to build ourselves up a bit more before we get ready for that kind of.
Yeah, I agree.
All right. Great night, everyone.
Have a good night. It's been awesome.
Indeed.